Donation box is up. So I tried and I tried. It appears even using StreamYard for pre-recorded content now is problematic for me with my Wi-Fi internet connection or whatever. So I don't know. I don't know what to do with that. Tried recording backstage. Obviously, you know, it is what it is. So, but I want to finish this video. I hate leaving things unfinished. And so that's what I'm going to do tonight. Finish the Pocket Locker video. And StreamYard is, you know, it's good for open rooms for me at this point and not much else. Just came from Tog's stream. We did a good old time over there. Kind of ended pretty abruptly. That's alright. I do that sometimes too. Further back in my history. I guess I've been watching a lot of videos. Where we go with this, but alright. I think we had, yeah, this is about where we left off. We'll just let it run from here. Violence here. Gotta call them out when you see them.
I don't know how to really make all the parallels and all that shit for y'all, but that's just what it felt like. That's just what it felt like, right? Like, well, it wasn't, you know, but I was saying, well, yeah, so they wanted to exterminate all the Jews. First, like what? Like what are you talking about? Like, can we just genocide is bad and move on? Like what? Like what's?
Yeah, we can do that.
Y'all, a man who like is supposed to be some kind of famous person for moral.
He's a famous neuroscientist.
Philosophizing and representing.
Yeah, I think moral philosophy is like part of something that it's almost like a hobby, right? He's popular for it, but it's not his area of expertise.
And secular. I can't.
Because then you don't have to examine all of the component characteristics that existed in their society and existed globally that gave rise to it, that could continue to exist to this day. You can just pretend like it was an anomaly. It wasn't an atrocity committed by the Western world.
Spooky, yes, we're reviewing Jay Bundy here, yeah.
And that's why you can say things like, oh, Islamic jihadists are actually worse than the Nazis because their culture is.
Now I'll say, like when Bundy talks about, you know, introducing socialism in the U.S., like in a practical sense, I tend to agree with him on a lot of points, you know, but when he does this shit, it drives me nuts.
Giving rise to this hatred, but that's not what happened with the Nazis in Germany. It was something different. It wasn't Western culture giving rise to this sort of thing. It wasn't the anti-Semitism and the colonialism and the sort of just widespread fascism that exists. Like it's like that's all their culture is. That's all their culture can give rise to. It's very insidious.
It's really insidious, and what you do is lay conditions for history to repeat itself when you aren't explicit about this, and when you say that the fact that Nazis that had more power is irrelevant to our condemnation of them as a political movement. I mean, the whole problem with the Nazis is that they had power. It's not this isn't some sort of.
So the problem with the Nazis, I mean, aside from the fact they had power, is how they attained power, how they achieved that status at that time. Right? You have to look at the circumstances surrounding that and why the German people capitulated to the fascist party at that time.
you're a bad guy, I'm a good guy, I'm a civilized smart person, you're a dumb brown person analysis. I mean, this is just for children.
Well, it's purely ideal.
Now, and this is like, I know enough to say, like, yeah, the Nazis were, ideologically, right, they did, essentially dehumanize anybody else, right? Because they're, according to them, like Aryan people, whatever the fuck they thought that meant, were superior to all other people, right? But I've had the opportunity to meet a modern German person who left Germany to come to the USA, right? Because he was a Nazi ideologically, and made a point to say to me and somebody I knew, a person of color, hey, I don't have any problem with you, person of color, right? Because I'm a Nazi. My ideology, I hate Jews. I don't really have, you people of color are kind of just peripheral to what I believe, right? He was like, no. And he came to America because he was free to express his ideology, his political opinions, free of oppression, because in Germany, he would have been considered a criminal, right? He would have been in prison for expressing his views.
Logical.
Yeah.
We've moved from any sort of material whose brain is doing the worst thing, and that is
and that's exactly why I got that flavor of biblical slavery. I'm gonna tell y'all something. It's kind of crazy because it feels kind of confrontational, but it is a legit feeling that I've been able to put words to, right? Which is when I see people having those biblical slavery debates, and of course it's usually a bunch of white guys. I want to talk to, never like the scholars. Like if it's Kip Davis,
it's usually a bunch of white guys. I guess Jay Bundy hasn't interacted with Jill yet, right?
Davis or Josh Bowen debunking that shit. I'm definitely glad they're doing that noble work. And I think they handle shit with the appropriate level of cultural sensitivity. So I don't want to make it sound like it's a racial thing. It's an intersectionality thing, right? It's when you're right and you're wrong. You understand what I'm saying? So the thing I want to say to them so often is, I'm a descendant of slaves, and I know I'm a descendant of slaves, and I wish they thought about that, because they talk about it in such a way like, well, biblical slavery really wasn't that bad, and maybe it was indentured servitude, and first off, to lie about it, like, we're people who descended slaves, and we can read that book, and we know you're lying about what's in the book, but you're also literally trying to play this game where you want to sit here and debate which forms of fucking slavery.
They're trying to defend the Bible, and while I agree, slavery is indefensible, right? They're not defending the practice of slavery. They're defending the historical context in which it took place, right? In order to defend the commands of their God in the book, right? You understand the nuance of that argument, right? None of these people are like, oh, well, okay, I'll say some of these people, but a very small fraction of them actually say maybe we should reinstitute slavery, but that's not the majority.
Are really better or worse. Also, you can say that a particular form of slavery is in fact moral and justified. What are we doing here?
They were able to justify it historically, right? Again, just to defend the message conveyed in the book. There's not a lot of people saying, oh, we should do slavery now. That's not really
and
the
you
argument.
really want to look at him and be like, yo, do you not know there's black people around? You're putting this shit on the internet and black people can hear you.
Right. Yeah. Like as if every argument that you make, you should be like, oh, I should be worried about, can black people hear me now? No. It's irrelevant to the conversation for you to be like, but what about me? No, that's, if you're talking about, ancient history in this case, I mean, no, it's not your what's the word I'm looking for? This ain't your fight, I mean,
ancestors, not that many generations ago, were actual slaves in this fucking country. They're here because their ancestors were. And you just talked like this, like of like
it's the fact that you're right. You're not actually hearing the argument. You're personalizing everything when it ain't about you.
How
not about you?
Dare you? All right. And then the reason we're having this conversation, y'all, is because I also, again, back to him being a representative of atheism.
As far as I know, again, like Sam being a representative of atheism is something that he just happens to be a vocal atheist, but he's a representative in neuroscience, right? Who happens, and so he got popularized that way.
How much this whole thing is sloppily carrying water for Christianity. First off, to start with this idea that the most depraved people who struggle to even figure out what it means to live a moral life or how to be a decent human, right? That was the preamble. Was that the people?
It was like the people who are defending, sympathizing with jihadism, right? They're morally confused. They have terrible ideas, objectively terrible ideas. Like most of the rest of us can say, oh no, we can't defend that. But yet, through their religious ideology, here they are defending it. Not historically, not in the context of the past, in the context of the present, in the way people ought to act now.
People who literally can't figure out how to live on this planet with others the most are the radical Muslim extremists.
True.
Again, bro, are you not living in the United States of America right now?
Yeah, you don't have Christian radicals committing genocide in the U.S. right now. It's not a thing that happens.
Anti-DEI bills in over 30 states. I'll give you a hint. It isn't radical Muslim extremists who is literally trying to be like backspace. Oh, fuck it. Control, Alt, delete on the LGBTQ community. Oh, shit. I lost our place in the video.
This is why I blame Pocket Locker for everything. But no, yeah. But you know what I mean? Like, hate speech, even if it is hate speech, is not tantamount to genocide. It's not the same thing. It's not roughly equivalent. It's not even comparable.
But seriously, who's doing that shit? The
ones blowing people up, like literally fucking blowing, and themselves, right? Martyring themselves in the name of their faith.
Who just took away is trying to turn the clock back to the 19th century.
This is such a bogus fucking equivocation. And you're like, oh oh no, we need to try to, no, we're not gonna make that comparison here. Like, it's not even close. The dudes are still literally throwing acid in the face of women who try to get an education. Like, no, there's no comparison. You must be high.
Other hand, it isn't radical Muslim extremists.
Oh, so it doesn't affect me, right? We don't have, these heinous acts in the U.S. for it to be relevant to me, right? Like, no.
He will not put proper checks on the weapons of mass destruction that are being used to murder children all over the country. I got a hint for you. It isn't radical Islamic extremists.
And he's not talking about radical Islamic extremists in the U.S., right? We're talking about Hamas and Israel. We're talking about Israel-Palestine. It's a different conversation. You got to know what conversation that you're involved in here.
Who is currently supporting, funding, and providing arms to the genocide in Gaza? I'm going to give you one more hint, and that's that it isn't radical Muslim extremists. Toss this mug out the boat, y'all. You don't get to be the representative of atheism carrying water for the Jesus Squad like this.
That could continue to exist to this day.
And literally, like,
there he goes
then
again.
literally saying like the Nazis, the ones who went to a Christian church.
You don't get to
Sunday.
be the representative. Now I get to be the representative.
Hey, yeah, they were nowhere near as bad as the ones who go to the like. That's literally to like that level of it. You can't. Come on, Sam Harris. You ain't stupid, bro. You know what you're saying. You know what you're saying, and I know what you're saying, and I hear what you're saying. Just like we hear all of your ilk, all of your little new atheist turned conservative anti-woke buddies talking about how, well, maybe I'm culturally Christian, or, well, Christian societies are better than Muslim societies, and, well, the Christianity's bad, but it's nothing like that Islam. It's the same thing. You don't have to try to be cute about it. You could just tell us you agree with all them people.
That's not what's being said, though. This is your interpretation. This is not like, I'm gonna, I'm picking Christianity over Islam because, right? It's like, okay, what's the more dangerous? What's the more important thing that I should be addressing right now? Oh yeah, brown people bombing brown people for their religious ideology. Oh yeah, this is not, it's not even. Think what you want about like U.S. policy, change U.S. policy, fine. But that's not the argument that's being made.
You can just pretend like it was an anomaly. It wasn't an atrocity committed by the West.
And what the children.
Well, this is or historical considerations into who has the worst brain and whose brain is doing the worst thing, and that is
brain, right? Like, it's not saying that Muslim brains are inferior to Christian brains, right? It's saying that Muslim theology there has devolved to such an extent that they can't even condemn these actions, right? Most of them can't come out and condemn the actions of their extremist sects, right? Because it still jives with what they believe.
What Sam Harris is
Yeah, I
here
think I
for.
stopped it.
And
Bring
in
out the
the end,
outburst.
it's racist too. I mean, because
It's
why would
racist
why would you be
shit.
absolving? Yeah.
It's not
No, it's also-
racist. It's not racist. He's not out there saying, "Oh, Arab people bad, Arab people inferior," right? That's something you're inserting in there that was never said. It was just never said.
Literally, the white
sorry,
genociders
cursing,
were
but it's
better.
also messed up to say like, oh, the Nazis are gone. That's why we can analyze them critically now. And also the Nazis aren't that bad. You know who's really bad? Brown people.
Yep.
Like that's
How in the fuck did you read any of that from what he said? It's just, it's insane.
And like, I'm sorry, but why do y'all keep telling me these dudes are brilliant? And look, I don't mind when these motherfuckers say stupid shit. We all say stupid shit. We really, really do.
Yeah, indeed.
But when you come out with your stuff, when you come out with your book, your writing, your publication, your real shit, this time to put your best foot forward and show us what you got. And you say some stupid shit like that. Nah, you don't get to be part of Genius Club. First of all, I don't have any respect for anybody that tells me the Nazis are gone. Again, I live in the United States of America.
Okay.
Nazis be out.
Yeah, and you're right. Nazis are out. You just don't know what they are. You don't know how to identify them. You don't know how to differentiate them from other right-wing groups. You just don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, no, the German Nazis, over and done. That shit is fucking old news, right? You know, we have American National Socialists. They're out there. But they're not the ones that you're attacking. They're not the people that you're addressing. You are wrong on every front right here. It's about to, I think, list them off. If this is the part I'm thinking of.
We're in a new right having the march. They was all. They be all over. Have you heard of Donald Trump? Have you heard of the Proud Boys? The Nazis. We got like a Nazi jambalaya going on in America. It's crazy. I'm gonna tell you how crazy it is in America. Gang, I am kidding you not. I'm dying if I'm lying. Don't y'all know fucking who Andrew Wilson is? Y'all know who Andrew Wilson is, right?
So Andrew Wilson, right? Yeah, and I do know who he is. Listen to him pretty frequently these days. Not a Nazi. The dude is a right-wing, conservative, fucking talking head. Yeah, he supports Christian nationalism, which is not the same as National Socialism. You don't understand.
He's literally a fucking Christian nationalist. He debates for Christian nationalism. That's what he's known for.
Not identical to National Socialism.
Be honest, y'all. We know they some fucking Nazis, right?
No. That's you. You're calling them Nazis. They're not Nazis. It's not what Nazism is.
He will literally say and he can't be like the Nazis, and he can't be racist because he doesn't even acknowledge race. Gang, we have
And actually, that's a fair point. If you don't acknowledge race, you don't discriminate based on qualifications, and I have not seen Andrew Wilson meet those qualifications.
Fucking Nazis who debate other Nazis. It's like not only has Nazis not gone anywhere, they've like splintered. They've become basically like Christianity, where there's like different sects and flavors and different denominations of Nazi, and they got different uniforms and they fight against each other.
So now you're getting into this whole 99% of those people, majority, not Nazis. They're calling each other Nazis, right? That's an in-group, infighting problem. Nothing to do with us, nothing to do with you, because you don't know what Nazis are.
You're the Nazi. No, you're the.
It's like I had this mentality in like middle school, high school. Like anything right-wing, any type of fascism, like That's all Nazi. It's all, but that just means that you don't understand the nuance of what political ideologies like actually mean and what arguments are taking place. Just you don't understand.
We're dealing with.
It's a
Nazism,
fucking juvenile way of looking at the political spectrum in the U.S.
Unfortunately, is alive and well. I'm sorry if you thought you was gonna.
I don't know about alive and well.
America.
I mean, it's protected. I didn't come to America. I was born here just like you were, Jay. So I don't know who you fuck you're talking to right now. You know, Nazism is such a fucking tiny fraction of people who actually subscribe to American National Socialism, right? They're so small, such a small group, probably smaller than the woke ideology.
And get like some cheesesteaks and some hamburgers and I don't know, go to shop at a big mall. I don't know what you're supposed to do as an American tourist, but come see some of this Nazism we got.
That's his analysis. At the same time, he's saying Nazis don't exist. He's also saying they're not so like bad, not as bad.
Said after he watched the tape from October 7th, for like the unedited footage from October 7th, that basically he wrote an op-ed afterwards where he was like, even Nazis like drank themselves to sleep to like forget all of the atrocities that they committed. They were racked with guilt about what they were doing in the concentration camps. Somehow, in the effort to say how bad Hamas is and how evil Hamas is, it's also somehow in some way implicitly obviating or at least slightly absolving what the Nazis did in the Holocaust.
Yeah.
I'll also just make a note, like, don't fucking give Richard Hanania
I will say, I criticized Sam much earlier in the last video. Yeah, it was a bad fucking analogy to make. It was a bad, it's a terrible argument. Just stop bringing up Nazis in relation to everything because it's not fucking relevant. Bring up Nazis when you're talking about Nazis. That's when we should be talking about. But now, in bringing up this fact and making this comparison, now Sam Harris has become, in the minds of this whole panel, the Nazi. Right? Because he compared Hamas to the Nazis. I don't know. In the minds of these people, that's the way they spin this narrative. And it's fucking crazy.
Attention, don't quote tweet him. Leave that little Nazi roach like to die in obscurity. People need to not be shocked by the Nazi doing Nazi things on Twitter and quote tweeting it. But anyway, here we go.
Okay, speed it up a little bit here.
But their ideology is actually worse. Jihadism is essentially Nazism plus an expectation of paradise. It's Nazism plus religious fanaticism.
The only difference really there is that the Nazis believed they were going to have like paradise on earth, right? They didn't have this crazy idea of getting martyred and going to heaven and having these 72 virgins, right? They just thought they were going to have a perfect ethno-state in the real world here and now, right? They did this whole fucking supernatural, superstitious bullshit. It was kind of on the peripheral, and thought they were going to have a clean German ethno-state, pure Aryan people, and everything was going to be great. They were all going to be wealthy and happy. That's all it was.
I can't. Does he not?
Take your time.
If I was sitting in the fucking audience and Sam Cedar said this shit, y'all, I would have to leave. Because I wouldn't put hands on that man. Bro, I promise you, I'm dealing with religious extremists in America. I promise you they're not Muslims. I promise you the motherfucking...
Now, you can call them extremists if you want, right? But are they out killing people actively in the name of their religion? Like actual murder. I'm not talking about your whole fucking, they're othering us. They want to delete us. They speak out against us. That's something else. We're talking about actually killing people, bombing, other, but driving trucks through crowds of people. You saw a little bit of that under Trump, but I don't know if you can attribute that directly to Christianity or something else. But
problem is they are trying to establish a fascist theocracy, and they believe they've been ordered to do so, and that the reward is going to be eternal life. I promise you.
But they haven't bombed anybody over it, as far as I can tell.
Does he not know this? Does he not understand this? I can't even listen to this shit. This is what I mean about carrying water for Christianity. It is telling the white genocide. Okay,
big love,
and
William.
Acting. Did you hear how basic that was? That was just you. You have fundamentally missed the basic foundational shit of the Abrahamic faiths. Just unbelievable.
Plus an eagerness to be martyred and to see their children martyred. But they only make the Nazis look comparatively benign.
Oh my God.
Nazism was a quasi-religious phenomenon.
Nazi apologism.
These people were not rationalists. It was basically racist mysticism anchored to a cult of personality.
And
Nazis.
There he calls the Nazis racist mysticism, for sure, right? But they're gonna get mad about it. This whole panel, they're just gonna get mad.
Women and children as human shields.
This is him. So that's just basically saying that the jihadists want you to kill their children.
Yep.
True.
And also the Nazis weren't so bad, apparently. That's why
Yeah,
they were
relatively
Sam Harris.
Because they believe that their children are martyred and they're going to go to paradise.
Podcast. Didn't he used to just do like Zen meditation or something? I feel like
Him and Russell Brand. They meditated their way towards.
I don't think there was ever a point in which Sam Harris was just doing meditations. Like, hold on, let me read that comment. Bitch made alarmist. I had my gooch shot off in the war. Oh, shots fired.
Minimizing the Nazis compared to Hamas. There's a couple things I want to play here. One is this Indian diplomat here talking with, I forget this guy, Karan Thapar, who does really great interviews. This is just him talking. This is how diplomats talk about. This is not like far leftists. This is not, some sort of like extremist group. This is ambassadors. This is how ambassadors talk about terrorism, who aren't like cowed by Israel.
Now, yesterday, Mr. Evan, Israel announced what it called so far not listed Hamas as a terrorist organization, but the Israeli ambassador has made clear to Indian journalists that Israel has formally asked India to do this. If India does take that step, perhaps in response to what Israel has taken yesterday, how will it be viewed in Riyadh, in Cairo, in Abu Dhabi, in Amman?
India has suffered terrorist violence from Lashkar-e-Taiba from 1989 to 1990. That is for nearly 35 years. I never heard the Israelis say anything in that regard over all these decades. And now, declaring Lashkar-e-Taiba as a terrorist organization and now declaring Hamas as a terrorist organization are really meaningless. They serve no useful purpose. We are not involved. We are not engaged. As far as Hamas is concerned, we have had no engagement with them as an organization. We have never taken a public position, and therefore we've never described it. To call Hamas at this moment a terrorist organization, to my mind, would be a travesty. Hamas is a political entity, and it has participated in elections. The reason why you find the Palestine Authority so feeble today is because the Palestine Authority itself, led by Mahmoud Abbas, Israel, and the United States, are terrified that if you had free and fair elections in the West Bank and Gaza, the Hamas would win. It would win hands down. That is why we have not had elections from 2011 till today, and you have Mahmoud Abbas in position, elected for 5 years, now in place for the last 15 or 20 years.
Really
therefore,
fast.
You have, it is also a militant organization.
I should have slowed this up. Like, huh?
But it is a resistance movement. It is a resistance movement in line with numerous resistance movements that you have found in occupied territories. Indeed, in our own country as well. We have therefore, as I have said, and I'm going to repeat my cliche, that terrorism, like beauty, lies in the eyes of the beholder. And therefore, academia has moved away. Terrorism. We don't use the word terrorism. We use the word violent extremism. And that is a neutral term. Terrorism is a term used by governments that are attacked by resistance fighters, and very often we stigmatize them as terrorists. That is neither here. As far as India is concerned, labeling Hamas as a terrorist.
That's it.
Sorry,
that was a mouthful. I'm not even going to address that. That's fine.
That's half the speed that Matt normally listens to this stuff anyway.
Okay, so
but the point is just obvious to anyone who
up too. So okay, it makes sense.
Media organizations that haven't wrestle with the fact that Zionism and Zionists and Israel lie about this stuff all the time and use these sort of terms like terrorist as propaganda. If we have time, I also have another clip of Sam Harris. This is recently, maybe, I don't know if you can see the date there, but probably within the last month or so, on the Decoding the Gurus podcast. And here it is, if you're at 55, Bradley, and they talk about, this is a great podcast, very, I think, fair. All right. So look, before
before we get into this other clip, I want to do a quick gather plug. And the thing I wanted to talk about quick. I'm not playing anybody. There's nobody here. Right. So it's like, you know, like you're sitting has mastered Tetris. This Tetris is unbelievable, your friends. And
so my kind of point there is, if you present that conflict as being, you know, purely about the forces of civilization, it's like a religious fanatical cult, and don't mention that there is a fanatical religious cult that is in the government, the promised land, and them, Hamas, and all the things, you can still argue that Israel has a right to defend itself. Netanyahu and his government, it is a very right-wing government. And the last thing I'll say, and I'll give you a chance to respond. The prime minister who was assassinated.
I'm not going to read that.
He wasn't assassinated by Islamic extremists. Yeah. He was assassinated by a Jewish extremist who derailed the peace negotiation, kind of whitewashes those concerns, which are legitimate.
I mean, I raised those points a fair amount. It's just in proportion to the problem on the Islamic side, they're quite small. I mean, they're very unhelpful. I fully grant to you that Netanyahu has been. He's to some degree culpable for what happened on October 7th, if for no other reason that his attention was split, and he was propping up the settlements in the West Bank and leaving the border with Gaza, fairly undefended, right? So, but yeah, all the mad work that the settlers are doing in the West Bank, and the religious extremists who support them.
All right, there's more I wanted to say, but I do want to speak on that. This is another thing people do that you got to people got to pay attention to when they do it. Words matter. The substance of your argument is important. Not that, oh God, I don't even like using the word arguments anymore, but what you say, right? And to me, people do a lot of this both sides thingy that it's like not really even both sidesism. And the way that happens, and Sam Harris just did it, and people in our spaces do it all the time.
In our spaces. There he goes again.
They'll say,
there you go, talking about our spaces. I guess we share space, technically speaking, but I don't know who we are.
Hey, they have a problem with both sides. But then their critique of the right or the conservative or usually the people that are fucked up in the situation isn't actually that they were wrong or that they were fundamentally misguided or that they were doing the wrong thing, but that there was some like nitpick about like, oh, the problem isn't like, like Netanyahu's whole framework and agenda and the genocidal instincts of his fucking regime and all of the twisted politics and all this shit. No, it's he should have had more reinforcements on the border. Yeah, that's your critique. That's not right. That's not actually getting at the substance of what's wrong, right? It's
those aren't our politics, right? You seem to see now you're criticizing him again for talking about, okay, so Sam Harris should just focus on American policy and that's it, right? No commentary on what's going on in the Middle East, right? Just don't talk about it. Is this your argument? You should not have an opinion?
Fundamental, like you think they're fundamentally wrong in those, but then your critique of the other side isn't that. And I should actually we're gonna name that something else. Let's call it, I want to call it like seesawing. Right? Because you're really putting far more weight on one side than the other. Maybe tipping the scales would be more appropriate or something. I don't know.
All of that is incredibly unhelpful, and I don't support it at all. And I've said in other contexts, I thought that the settlers should be dragged off contested land by their beards. Right? I mean, that's not a optically a great thing to say in the aftermath of October 7th. But I'm Jewish, and I can say whatever I want on the topic. I think those people are religious imbeciles, and they're creating immense harm, right? And they're imagining claims upon.
Why doesn't the state of Israel act like it? Why does it instead act like actually they're part of the plan here? That's a simple question. But Sam Harris, historyology of the Israelis or in the settlers, that stuff's irrelevant because that stuff's only actually relevant to these people when they want to demonize somebody that's getting bombed.
Liz Allen said the opinion is extremism is worse when the perps are brown, it seems, according to Harris. Yeah. It was important, I think, to actually do this because I do think, unfortunately, there's actually a lot of this right leaning, especially on social and political issues, that is still going on in atheist spaces. And there's also a lot of people who I think are not aware of it. And you do still hear Sam Harris spoken about in a way that it's kind of obvious people aren't aware of the problems with him.
Now, again, in Pocket Locker's mind, right, the right is the right, the center is the right, and the left is also the right. So I'm unaware of any part of the political spectrum where Pocket Locker, closer to center, let alone going left, right?
So yeah, I just wanted to make it clear. I don't think everybody's on the same page about Sam Harris being problematic. And so, if people had different opinions of Sam Harris going into
I definitely say he's problematic, but I wouldn't call him a fucking Nazi apologist. See, that's where you just take things to the other extreme. Just call him a Nazi.
Yeah, I'd be happy to hear it. No shade.
All right. Well, that was fun to see him a little bit uncomfortable there.
But that is the solution to the West Bank. I'm sorry, like, not dragged off by the beards, but like there has to be some sort of expulsion that's probably not going to be, and I'm not saying by like just violence, but the international community needs to say, you need to go.
Yeah.
These houses belong to the right of return, all that stuff. There's going to be violent resistance if that ever came.
See, this is problematic. This is problematic. And I shouldn't say that I mean that in a way of good trouble. We spoke on this channel about the issue with land acknowledgement statements and land grab universities. I think if you search land grab universities, if you just search land grab on the channel, I think that episode will pop up. And one of the things that was, I work at the University of Minnesota, and there's a lot of land acknowledgements. The university as one of the land grant universities. And so as somebody, from a little bit further East Coast in Michigan, like I wasn't used to these land acknowledgement statements. Like I wasn't used to, seeing them in people's emails, seeing them on syllabus, hearing them even mentioned sometimes during like important events and things like that. And at first I was like, okay, I'm kind of with this. Like certainly as somebody who thinks, we need to do everything we can for, DEI, like that's really important. And I felt like it increased my awareness and certainly got me thinking about
DEI,
these things.
I'm not familiar with that. I have to research that.
But there's been a lot of criticism that they're not enough, right? And that the efforts the university has made to the justice part of doing something about it has been majorly lacking. From what I can tell, usually they're rather superficial things like, oh, we'll take a plot of land and dedicate it to, some mutually beneficial community research or preservation of animals or something. It's like nowhere near enough or even substantive, arguably. And it seems to be, again, concerned with things that are mutually beneficial rather than restorative to the party that's been wrong. And all of that principle, which is like when you work with children, toy, part of what you teach them as far as apologizing and making right is they have to give it back. There's a huge like basic sense, I think, that if you take something from someone, you have to give it back or give them something of commensurate value, or else.
This is an interesting argument right here, because if you think about that and you like really peel back the layers of that, what Pocket Locker would be saying here is that what the U.S. ought to do is just give the land back, all the land that was taken, right? Return all the blacks to Africa, right? Because that's where they were taken from, right? According to this argument. I'm not even saying that's legitimate, but I mean, if you really peel back the layers, like how far back do you want to roll this? Like, can we just undo history? Can we just take everything back? Give back all? And even according to the native peoples, the land didn't actually belong to anybody, right? That wasn't even a concept that they held until they were invaded and land was taken from them. They were no longer able to utilize it So like, how far do you want to take that argument?
You're saying you're sorry you took it.
You wouldn't be giving black people reparations. Maybe, you'd be giving them, a purse full of coin and then sending them back where they once came from. Send them back to Africa with some money, right? That's where your argument really goes if you keep going with it.
But you're gonna keep it, right? And that I think, if I'm understanding, and certainly from the way I look at issues related to, my particular marginalities, it's not worse, right? Even if there's like some I don't know, some objective standard, right, by which acknowledging is a net positive, and acknowledging is always better than not acknowledging. So it has to be better to acknowledge, and it sometimes feels, because it feels like because there's one thing when a person doesn't acknowledge something, then it feels like, okay, the work is in getting you acknowledge that you wronged me. You haven't acknowledged that you wronged me, or that the situation is fucked up, and so there's this optimism in a sense that if I it. But if you already acknowledge that it was wrong, and you acknowledge that you did it, and you acknowledge it was fucked up, but now you won't do anything about it, it almost feels like you're taunting me. Like a nanny, what are you gonna do about it? Because it's like, yeah, it was fucked up. Yeah, I was fucked up. Yeah, my bad. It was fucked up, but it is what it is.
It's
right?
not,
That's what you feel like you're really telling me.
I didn't do it. I didn't institute slavery. I didn't take land from anybody. I didn't do any of that shit. I'm not holding, you know what I mean? Like, that's this whole mentality, like all white European Christian descendants need to just take accountability for what their ancestors did and make it right. Make it right. It's not just acknowledging the fact that this happened and be like, oh yeah, that is really fucked up, and we're going to try not to do that anymore. Let's not do that anymore. It's not good enough. Not good enough.
It might have been wrong, but it is what it is, right? And so now my thinking is much more towards there needs to be reparations. There needs to be, and you can call it whatever you want. I like the term reparations.
Into reparations benefit from me monetarily, because in your mind somehow I have I'm just
justice.
My mind's blown.
There needs to be that give back. And again, I'm not asking.
Give it back.
First of all, I'm not asking.
Give it back, because I didn't take anything from you. You and I, we have no personal beefs, but I need to give something back to you, right? To make repairs for the harms that have been done historically.
For anything, because in any of these issues, who knows about even going about what the ask is, or who gets to determine what the ask is. Even in the areas of my life where I'm marginalized, I don't know that I'm the right person to be determining what the ask is. But to play it out that way, right? From what I see as someone just trying to be in solidarity with marginalized people, there has to be an understanding of the value of what was taken. Both the value in terms of the loss, the devastation, the trauma, the generational devastation and trauma, right? Like the loss.
And you don't even acknowledge the fact that, if you were living in Africa right now, absent the opportunity, these things, right? You'd be working in a mine somewhere. You'd be in a fucking, one of these, like, your life would be shit if your like, you can't acknowledge that, right? You would be living under such horrible conditions that you would not have this voice to speak on this platform.
Incalculable, but there has to be an effort to meaningfully calculate, right? Just like we do in courts of law all the time, just like we do in business all the time. And there has to be an effort also to calculate the profit and the benefit of what was done with what was taken. Okay? And then that has to be seen to me as the basics of what we're working towards. And so then you get into the what's pragmatic, what's practical. But I love that here, because I think that's what we feel
be practical
when we think about the settlers, when we think about the Zionists. We think about the same principle. Okay, you can acknowledge you took it, but you got to give it back.
Give what
again,
back?
I don't know how deep that goes.
Give
how far...
what back? I don't have shit. I don't have land to give you, right? Me personally, not a thing.
Back that goes, right? But yeah, I definitely think people should take that seriously. Like,
came to pass by Israelis, and there needs to be defense against. Till this, instead of confronting actually this stuff, we've left it until the violence continues to spurt out, because there's actually no military or like fencing solution. Even if Netanyahu had the fence of Gaza being guarded and wasn't supporting the settlers, like that's not really a solution.
Also, he's totally talking out of both sides of his mouth there by going, he literally says back to back, oh, you know, the religious extremists in Israel are very small. It's not that big of a problem. But October 7th happened because Netanyahu was distracted by what was going on with the religious extremists. I mean, what?
Brian from Kentucky. I'd like to see Sam Harris explain how rational and not extremist the Third Temple is in Israel among Jewish extremists. Excavating under Al-Aqsa Mosque so it will collapse. Netanyahu literally held a press conference under the mosque as a way of bragging about destroying it. I did not even...
Hang on, this is...
So I'll check out that comment from Pragmatic Crystal. Freshman Representative Jasmine Crockett, Democrat from Texas, seemed to endorse the idea that Black Americans should be exempt from paying taxes as a form of reparations for the injustices of slavery. Again, just ridiculous. Why would people who have never been enslaved be exempt from anything because slavery happened? Don't make no sense. There's nothing pragmatic about that, Crystal.
That's an idea. That's an interesting idea. I think there's a need to be flexible and creative, and I definitely think that's a creative idea. I could get with that.
I'm sure you could.
No taxation without reparations. Yeah. Nah, she's pretty dope. And again, like, like a lot of these things are incalculable.
She's pretty dope.
There really is.
She agrees with me. She's definitely not a Nazi.
Policy or number that's going to make it right. But but like I said, there should be some serious effort to at least recognize the scale and scope of that value. And
just funny because you can make a biblical argument. What they're saying, the sins of the father. That's a biblical argument, right? And this is the same argument that the reparations people would be making. I don't care if you did it. Your great granddaddy did it. So now you got to pay for the sins of the father.
With race in this country, and I think the same would be true of the situation with Native Americans, and I would argue other groups, is that a huge part of both the systematic generational oppression and the effect of same is economic. And so I know for a lot of people, and certainly the way I was always talked about.
I would be willing to bet my fucking left arm, Jay Bundy, that you make hand over fist more money than I do every year. So talk about economic inequality. Come at me with that.
Racial issues in America is we're never going to take people's efforts to address racism seriously until they address the economic disparities. Until, my dad will tell you straight up, until they talk about addressing the economic disparities, as long as the average Black, household in New Jersey, which is where he lives, is like a 1/20th of the average white household. It's all talk. That addressing economic inequalities is definitely a step in the right direction.
Know that.
Sam Harris's legit position is that stuff is less important because Palestinians do suicide bombing sometimes.
And now they're going to sacrifice 4 red heifers. Is it heifers? Heifers, yeah. Without any white hair.
Not a country girl, Emma.
Yeah. Well, I thought I'd heard heifers in relation to like women.
Right, of course.
But I didn't know if I should say it. So I was like, which way could I go? All right. Anyway, definitely not a country girl. June from El Paso says, shout out to Matt's pinata analogy. Shit was fire.
That's one of my favorites, frankly. A lot of pinatas out there.
Mike in Philly said, did Sam Harris just call Nazism rational?
I think you call it pseudo-rational, but more rational than Hamas, I think.
I think
I think he said they were less harmful than Hamas. Like, in context.
he was saying it's pseudo-religious, but that it wasn't.
Pseudo-religious.
Which, I mean, half of the things that he was saying about like Nazism and Nazi Germany, I was like, clearly he doesn't know anything about Nazism and Nazi Germany, because pseudo-religious is putting it mildly. But again, like he's just like, this is just racism. You know, Arabs aren't how he's coding Islam.
He said what were the things he said? Oh, he said something like that stuck out to me. It was that you know, jihadists are trying to create a paradise for themselves, and it's like, wait, but like it's literally why the Nazis were expelling people from the country. Like,
yeah,
that's exactly the fucking same thing, except the jihadists believe that they'll get that in the afterlife if they martyr themselves. So they don't even give a shit if they build an actual country. Right? That's not even, they're like, fuck it. If I blow myself up and I kill fucking 7 Jews in the process, good enough for me.
Yeah. And I mean, what is Israel doing? They're literally saying we have a right to this land because of like the Bible and our genes from 2,000 years.
Israel is not fucking exempt from blame here. I don't hear Sam Harris making that argument. It's like, picking the lesser of two evils at this point because we have very little control of what's going on over there. Hence the reason that, again, it's Christians will supply these Israelis with weapons to be like, okay, because we kind of agree with you ideologically. Now, as it turns out, Israel happens to be one of the most tolerant democratic societies that we've turned out of this Christian nonsense fucking it's just like, oh, this is actually some of the best fucking representation we end up getting, right? And then support. It's all bullshit at the end of the day.
Ethnic state paradise. It's all
literally taking land and houses from.
What about Christian evangelicals who literally are supporting Israel's right to do a genocide because they think that Jewish people need to be in Israel for Jesus Christ to literally, like the Ark of the Covenant style. Like, I mean, come on. I think if anything, the people who are most engaged with their material circumstances are the Palestinians in this circumstance. The rest of them, Israel as well, but evangelicals are just going off pure just religious zealotry.
Okay, so I'm so glad.
Abolish Israel. Of Israel, right? That's your solution? Is that your solution? I don't even know where you're going with that.
Add that they closed that segment out with him saying that, because that is exactly what I was going to go back to for my closing, and also the reason we're doing this stream. At some point, it becomes irresponsible. A lot of y'all know, like, I've been talking more about the mainstream media's coverage of, the election and the current situation, and how frustrating it is that they're regularly calling out this cult of Trump and its delusions and the big lies and the grifting and all of this, but not recognizing that just pointing out the sort of extreme, sort of overlooking the bigger picture and the problems with Christianity in this country. And it's the same thing with Sam Harris. At some point,
Sam Harris does more to criticize Christianity in a fucking single sentence, legitimately, than you have done in this entire stream to criticize a whole fucking, well, you know, granted, they didn't even get to the entirety. That was it. That was it. Where you fucking think you get off just calling a fucking Jew a Nazi apologist. Nazi apologist. For sure, you simply don't understand. You don't understand Nazis. You don't understand the conflict in the Middle East. You've admitted as such, and now you're just like, well, I found this panel of people who agrees with me, and so let it rip. Let it rip. Let's just go with that, because it sounds good right now. It's probably going to gain me clout with the woke culture that I subscribe to, the cult that I am involved in. So let's keep going with that.
This Islamic extremism is driving this one side, and overlook the way religious extremism is literally driving the genocide of people in Gaza. Overlooking the way religious extremism in this country is supporting, funding, and arming that genocide and that conflict. And the way that religious extremism in this country is literally trying to create a similar religiously motivated, ethnically driven theocracy. It's like irresponsible. It's literally irresponsible.
Who is undermining that argument? Nobody's undermining that argument. Approach the conversation where it's at. You know, just, well, you know, he didn't say this or this or that in, you know, the 2 minutes I actually took to listen to the argument, because I almost guarantee you, if you listen to the rest of the video, he probably addresses those, but nobody bothered to go that far. Nobody bothered to actually listen to what Sam Harris has to say before they call him a Nazi apologist. And, you know, this is just, it's clickbait. You take a tiny little, you know, tiny little portion of the audio and be like, oh, we're going to jump all over this. And then you get no substance, nothing substantive out of it, except you get to call people Nazis and declare that you're morally righteous without ever making an argument, ever addressing an argument that is made. It's just crazy.
And it's permissive. It's permissive. It tells those people they're not the real problem. It tells those people they're not the bad guys. It tells those people that it fails to hold them accountable for their role in these situations. And again, gives them the juice they need to say the problem is over there. The religious extremists are over there. The violent religious people are over there. Again,
they are.
Why?
They're the ones committing fucking horrendous acts of violence. Day after day, year after year. We can see it. It's attested to. There's no, you know, there's nobody just, like, you're making this false equivocation to what's happening in the U.S., to what's happening in the Middle East, and it's untrue. It is so fucking deranged to sit here and try to claim to be morally superior to somebody without actually understanding their fucking argument. Not even making an attempt to understand the argument.
Conservative American politicians flying Israeli flags inside state houses across this country, on flagpoles right next to the American flag. Think about the criticisms of Barack Obama. Tan suit, didn't wear a flag pin, bowed his head to a leader of a Islamic State. Imagine if he had a Kenyan flag in his office next to the American flag.
Imagine.
Fox News would just explode. Conservative Americans would lose their shit. There'd probably be an impeachment hearing. They'd literally probably try to impeach him for using government reasons. But they fly Israeli flags in American state houses across the country right next to the American flag. What part of the job is that?
Personally, I think this whole fucking derangement, this obsession with flags, it needs to go. Just take all the fucking flags down. We don't need them, right? Symbolism is for the simple-minded, as George Carlin said.
And again, most of them to a person, religious Christian extremist. It's terrible. So, that's Rodrigo. What up, Rodrigo? I'll hit you up.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that's like all that really need to be addressed here. Just not everything is analogous to Nazis. In fact, most things are not analogous to Nazis, and people just need to stop making this fucking argument. It's stupid. No place in the modern unless you're talking about actual Nazis. Just put it down. Put it down. All right. I'm gonna, whatever. I'm gonna be up for a minute because I took a little nap earlier. So, post it up in open room. Chat will be open. My tolerance for bullshit will be low. Give it about 5 minutes and I'll open it up. Much love to everybody. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And I'll see you shortly.